Dr. Ron Paul, former congressman from Texas and host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Dr. Paul, welcome back. So nice to have you.
Thank you, Kennedy.
All right, so yesterday I was tweeting as I was watching the stock market open and shed off all that buttery goodness that I blame the Fed. Do you blame the Fed for yesterday's stock market issues and volatility?
Well, no, I blame the Fed for the bubbles, and the market causes the collapse of the bubble. So, yes, the Fed is responsible. You can't have that distortion and financial bubbles without a Federal Reserve printing money, because this sends a bad message. It pretends that there's a lot of savings. They manipulate interest rates, and people do dumb things like they overbuild or overinvest, and it's contagious. And then the market says it's really out of the whack. You can't sustain this debt. It eventually eats away at production, and you have to correct things. So what the market wants is the deflation. They want to get rid of the bad debt and get rid of the bad investments, but nobody likes that because politically that's not acceptable, and you can't get anything through like that in Congress. Besides, not too many people in Washington understand the business cycle from the Austrian perspective.
And I'm glad you do, because finally you can speak some sense to this, because obviously in places like China, where there's so much centralization and overregulation, they're essentially doing the same thing. What are they doing in China that's having an effect on U.S. and global markets?
Well, they're closely related, because we helped create the problem in China. We were able to export our inflation because we issue the reserve currency. So we do get a free ride, even though the distortions occur and they last longer, because we have the privilege of creating credit, and then we have excessive money, and then we buy goods from China. And it is true, we buy goods from China and not here. Prices are better. Standard of living actually goes up for poor people because the prices go down.
Yeah.
So we export these dollars, but then they monetize those dollars into yuan, and they have an inflationary bubble there too, but it's secondary to our bubble. But then they do us a great service by loaning this money back to us. But to say China caused all this is misleading. It goes back to the issuer of the reserve currency of the world, and that is our Federal Reserve System.
Should we end the Fed?
Absolutely. And the Fed, the sooner the better. It's not going to happen by a vote. There's too many powerful interests who always needs bailout and this sort of thing. But it will end because it will self-destruct. And in a way, central banks are losing their credibility right now. They lost a lot in 08 and 09, and they're not solving the problems around the world today. Once it's seen as a total failure, central banking as we know it today will have to end. And then we will have to think about, what do you sound money all about? How do you run an economy without giving this power to a few people to print money endlessly and then distribute it to their friends? That has to be challenged, and the market will do the challenging.
Yeah, and economic protectionism, I don't think, is the answer for that, but this crony capitalism is certainly tied to exactly what you were talking about. All big problems. Your son, who is running for president, Rand Paul, he says that he's got a lot of solutions. It seems as though he lost a little bit of traction after the debate. Did you call him and give him any advice, rather, after that first debate?
No, I took advantage of giving him advice, maybe when he was in grade school and high school. But he was the most interested in the family to read and study. He knows the business cycle. He knows about Mises. He went to hear these lectures very early on. But I noticed there were articles yesterday describing interviews with the presidential candidates, and they say, well, it's all China's fault, and what we need to do is clamp down on China. But I didn't see any comments from him, because I think he has a good understanding of how the business cycle worked from an Austrian perspective.
Yeah, that reactionary protectionism can be obviously quite dangerous in its own right. Do you think that you and Rand waited too long to combine forces in this election?
Well, I never knew we weren't working together. This idea, I think that was concocted, that there was some separation and all. Yeah. But I'm not one to interfere, And even when I was a candidate, even for Congress, I never went to my kids. Okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to go out and knock on doors. Everything was totally voluntary. It was sort of, like libertarianism. And some of them did, and Rand loved it. He got involved, and that's the way it is. There was never an intentional separation, and he was finding his ways, and you have a few people to deal with, and you have events to deal with.
Well, okay, but Dr. Paul, we're running out of time. We only have about 10 more seconds, and I have to ask you, will your son be the next president?
Well, he's certainly taking that risk. He's a candidate, so I think that definitely is a chance he will. But to say, I know who's going to be the next president, no, I'm not quite sure. But I think he is better qualified and understands economics much better than any of the other individuals running today.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul. Come back and see us soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.